So I decided to do a part two, finally, 3 years later, of my trip through the Georgia prison system. I know I ended my last video a few years ago and completely bypassed making another one for a long time. I didn't have a very good phone at the time that wouldn't last. I didn't have enough memory on my phone. Anyways, so where I left off was about to get on the prison bus to go to Jackson State Prison, or Jackson Diagnostic State Prison. Once you get on that bus, you start thinking about you might not make it back home because there is nothing but craziness and chaos and gay stuff going on in the back of the bus. And you're lucky if you can find a place to sit down next to a semi normal person. There's a few cages in the bus that are holding like extra violent people or people that have snitched on other people over serious murder charges and arson charges and rape charges, whatever the case may be. The real bad ones are inside of the cages. So I found a seat next to this older white gentleman, and not racist by any means, not trying to be racist. But when you get on the prison bus and you go to prison in Georgia, you roll with your own race. You do not go hang out with a different race, especially right away on the bus, because they will eat you alive. So you try to sit with somebody that's your own race. You sit down with this guy, and you're rolling through Atlanta at maybe 6:30 in the morning. The sun's just now coming up. The sun's gleaming off the buildings. It's absolutely beautiful driving through the city, and you're chained in a prison bus with some low music playing. It's hot as hell on the bus, depending on what time of year it is. You don't know. At that point, when you're rolling through Atlanta, you don't know if you're going to make it back home. And that's when you start questioning everything. Like, what the hell have I done? Why am I here? What did I do to deserve this? Never thinking that stealing from a store would get you in so much trouble. But then again, I was on felony probation for some serious thefts. And I was stealing from Target a lot every single day. So it caught up with me. So I got a 10-2. Thank God they offered me a straight 6, and I took the 10-2 like an idiot and took 8 years of probation, which was dumb. I should have just taken the straight 6. I would have been out in 4 years and had no probation. I'm finally here. It is 2025, and I've got 3 months left on the 10-year sentence total. So I'm finally almost done. But anyways, you finally get to Jackson. It takes about an hour and a half. We came from Bartow County, Georgia, down to Jackson Diagnostic. And when you pull in the parking lot of Jackson, before you pull in the parking lot, when you pull in the entrance, you can't see the prison from the road. You pull in the entrance, it's nothing but beautiful green pastures and grass, and there's a lake on both sides. It's just a beautiful piece of land, and you're thinking, oh, this might not be that bad. When you come up over the top of the hill, before you come to the main penitentiary, to the left, you see Supermax, which is the worst of the worst in the state of Georgia. That's where they're kept, like Brian Nichols that did the shooting in the courthouses in Atlanta years ago that killed the judge and all the other people. And then you get to the main prison. When you pull up to that main prison, it's still a little dark outside, so all you see is a row of lights that just disappears into the distance. And it looks so freaking scary. I don't care what you're in there for. I don't care how much of a badass you are. I don't care how much of a grown-ass man you are and the shit you've been through before. All that don't matter. All that goes out the window when you get to Jackson. Once you get to Jackson, you turn into a little boy in an intimidating summer camp is what it feels like. So the guard, of course, has to give up his guns. Both of them do, and a bucket at the front, and they pull the bucket up to the tower at the front. They let us in the gate, and we pull into this gravel lot. Well, there's like 100 other Bluebird Prison Express buses that are all in this gravel lot too, and you have to sit there for hours. They're moving people on and off the buses to get everybody situated. So there's like 120 people coming onto a bus that's already full. So you have people shoulder to shoulder standing in shackles for like 2 hours waiting for them to finally let us off the bus. Finally, they start pulling people off the bus, and they make you run. No matter how hot or how cold it is, they make you run all the way to this door. When you get to that door, they tell you to wait until you're all lined up and everybody on the bus is caught up. And after that, you go into this room, and there is about 12 footprint paintings on the floor. and you have to stand on one of those shoe print paintings, each one of you, like 12 at a time, stripped butt naked, no matter how hot, how cold. It's 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 humiliating. It breaks you down to the point where you don't feel human anymore. You feel like you're in a cattle drive or something. So you strip naked, they search you. You lift yourself. They don't actually physically touch you. You lift your nuts. You lift. You spread your cheeks. You do the cough. Everybody knows what that is, and they give you a little drop of lice shampoo in your hand, and they send you in the shower. Well, you're in the shower with like 6 other people, and intake at Jackson Diagnostic is literally shit. Like, it's crap. Like, everything's broken. When you go in the showers, the water coming out is freezing ice cold, and there's nothing you can do about it, and you're expected to just do it. You have 15 seconds to lather yourself in that lice shampoo all over your body, anywhere where there's hair, and then you got to rinse all that off in 15 seconds, because once the water shuts off, you can't turn it back on. After that, they give you a towel. You go sit butt naked in this little baby towel in the chairs. They finally give you a jumpsuit. You're soaking wet because the towel they give you sucks. It doesn't dry. It barely dry off a toddler, let alone a grown man. So once you sit down, you're sitting there slowly air drying. They give you a jumpsuit. You put the jumpsuit on. You don't have nothing underneath it. They might give you boxers if they have them. If not, you're naked underneath the jumpsuit. It's so uncomfortable. And then they make you sit down in the chair after you're wet, after you have a clean jumpsuit on, and they cut your hair. They shave your face, your hair. There is no custom, oh, I want this, I want that. I've seen guys with 3-4 foot dreads getting their heads shaved off. They don't care. Everybody's hair is getting shaved. All your facial hair, everything's gone. So everybody looks the same. Look naked as a jaybird on their face and their head. They let you keep your mustache if you want, but nobody wants to look like a pedophile, and some people do with just a mustache. So, most of the time you decide to shave it all off. After all that, you go sit in this gym, and it is a huge gym with these bench stools that go all the way down, kind of like bleachers, but just one flat over the whole gym. There's no levels. And so you go in there and you sit there, and there's like different rooms. This is parole, this is dental, this is medical, this is your paperwork with your records. You have to go through each one of these in diagnostics before you can get classified and go to a dorm or a cell house or whatever the case may be. And this whole time you're dry now, but all that hair that you got cut off your face and your head is all over your body, and it's making you itch so bad, and you're just miserable, and there's nothing you can do. You have to stay seated. Eventually, you're in there for at least 6 to 8 hours. I was anyways with the rest of the guys, depending on how busy they are, how many people came in with you, how many guards they got for the day, how many nurses, etc. So, while you're waiting, itching your butt off, you finally start dozing off. Like, you just start falling asleep because you're so bored. Nobody's allowed to talk. You haven't gotten fed anything. And keep in mind, when they woke you up in county, when they woke me up in county, it was like about 12:30 the night before. And you don't eat that whole time. You don't sleep that whole time. You're literally wide awake. So when all your diagnostics are finally over, they start calling your name to classify you. Excuse me. And once they call your name to classify you, they give you this bracelet. There's different colors for different dorms and cell houses you're going to. And when I say dorms, I mean, the open dorms. I know for a fact there's one whole building that is called J Dorm, and it's just open dorms. You're not in cells. You're just in the wide open with bunks, which you think would be okay, but it really sucks, especially in the middle of the night when everybody keeps you wide awake, banging on the desks and screaming and yelling and, God knows what else. The bathrooms are disgusting. You have to share the bathrooms with everybody. And keep in mind, this is just a temporary for everybody that comes in and out of Jackson. Like 90% of the people that come into Jackson go to different places. This is just their diagnostic classification. You're usually out of there in 2 to 3 weeks if you're lucky. If you don't tell them you have any mental health issues or serious drug issues, all the answers to those are always no. Do not ever tell them you have mental health issues. They will leave you in Jackson for months and months on end, and you do not want to be there. It's awful. You don't get no yard time. You don't barely get any store. There's a little bit of a store, a canteen that you can buy from, but there's no soups. There's no coffee. It's just like the little tiny basic stuff. You're surviving off of honey buns and cinnamon rolls for 3 weeks, and it sucks. And they're really expensive. And you also keep in mind when you go to the store in Jackson, especially if you're in the cell houses where which everything is turned the hell up. This is where the murders and the stabbings happen, and everybody's running wild, lighting shit on fire, like shit you see in the movies. That's how it is in the cell houses in Jackson with the bars that close. Like you're in a literally like a maybe 8x8 or maybe like a 6x8 cell. Luckily, I was in J dorm. I was in one of the dorms instead of the cell houses. And then eventually, after being there for a week, I got moved to another open dorm, which is by the kitchen, and you get to work in the kitchen at Jackson, and that is a sweet job. You get all the food you can eat, not that you really want the food, but you get all the food you can eat. You wake up at like, I don't know what, 4 a.m., you serve breakfast, you serve lunch, and then you get to be off for the rest of the day. You get to go back to the dorm. We have a TV in there, which most of the other cell houses don't have TVs. J dorm doesn't have a TV. You got all your phones and your TVs. Everything is right there in there with you. So, you can call your folks. You can talk on the phone for however long you want. You got showers in the dorm that are cleaner because they actually clean them. And you got TV so you can relax. And the night shift goes in at, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And they don't get off until like midnight because they serve dinner and, all the other stuff, the diets for certain people that need more food for, dietary reasons. But anyways, so when I was working in the kitchen, I always heard rumors about the rats in Jackson prison. I always, pictured them being good-sized rats. People said that there's rats in there that are the size of chihuahuas, and I'm like, yeah, right. There's no such thing as that. Well, my first day working in the kitchen, somebody took me to the back dock where there's a metal locked door. You can't get out there, but there's a bunch of huge trash cans out there full of food. And he said, watch this, and he banged on the metal door, and everything came alive out there. And there was about 50 rats, and they were so big that they were jumping off the trash cans, knocking the trash cans over. These rats, no joke, tail and all had to have been 2.5 feet long. I mean, bigger than a small chihuahua. Like, I've never seen rats so big in my life, and they're not really too much afraid of you. I've never seen a rat climb directly up a wall before until I saw these rats at Jackson climb directly up a wall. So, we get back to work or whatever, and I'm like, damn, that's nasty. There's rats everywhere, which this kitchen's disgusting. Stop. So, we end up, when you're serving breakfast in the morning, like, nobody's really talking, nobody's really talkative, we listen to a little bit of music if they let us, depending on who's in charge for the day. We serve death row inmates, and when you serve the death row inmates, whenever you're making their trays, you cannot put a drop of messiness on any part of the tray besides where the food goes. Like, there's no food at all, no drops, no nothing is allowed to be on the outer parts of the tray because they flip out if something's messed up. You don't want to make anybody mad on death row. They're already at their wits' end, So, you serve breakfast, you serve lunch, finally get to go back to the dorm. You can look up at any given time while you're serving the food, and there is a line of German cockroaches just crawling across the ceiling in a line. And they just keep coming and keep coming and keep coming and keep coming. For hours, this happens. Can't imagine how many actual roaches are in there. In the hallways, if you've never been to a penitentiary, I don't know how it is in other penitentiaries, but at Jackson, walking down these dim, dark hallways, all you smell is like smoke and guts. And I can't really go into too much detail about what I mean by that, but if you've been to Jackson, you know what I mean. Like, all you smell is like stale cigarette smoke and like guts, like death, pretty much. I can't explain it. You'll know if you know what I mean. You know what I mean. If not, then you can ask somebody that knows what I mean. So when you're walking down the hallways, it's dim and it's dark, and every once in a while, one of these huge rats will run right in front of you in the hallway. And no joke, man, we were walking one time to go to chow call, and there was 2 rats that ran across the hall, and then this cat. But the cat had no tail. He looked mangy as hell, and I thought it was a rat because he was about the same size. The cat was running with him. So apparently years ago, they let some cats loose in the prison trying to get the rat population under control. The cats couldn't win, so the cats eventually joined them. So now the cats just run rampant with the rats and eat what the rats eat and do what the rats do. You know, sleep in the same areas, live in the same areas. It's nuts. When you get in the dorms, though, when if you ever been to jail, you know what a net bag is. You get a net bag, you know, you can have all your commissary stuff in your bag. You do not leave your food in your box below your bunk. You do not leave it out. You have to put your food in your net bag, and you have to hang it from the rail of the bunk. If you do not do that, you will wake up with all your shit gone through by the rats. The rats will chew through your net bag and start eating all your food while you're sleeping. And it sucks. I've seen it happen, and it sucks. And it's pretty bad. You got to hang your net bag so the rats won't eat your food. If that tells you anything about how nasty Jackson is. But anyways, once you get through Jackson, it is awful. You know, they did execute 3 people while we were there because, as you know, Jackson has death row. 1 second, guys.